Hello, everybody. Ella J here on behalf of WrestleZone, and today I am joined by the new ace of EVE, Safire Reed. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm so excited to be chatting with you because, like I said a little bit off air, you've had a whirlwind of a year, which just came to a climax at the She Won at Pro Wrestling Eve, which we'll start off with that. Like I said, we
Yeah.
have to talk about this amazing feat you recently accomplished at Pro Wrestling Eve, where you defeated Alex Windsor to win the 2023 She Won, an honor only held by four other women. Take us back to that moment for a second. What emotions were you feeling knowing you had just won
Oh
the She
God.
Won and have now joined the Eve history books?
Honestly, it's still so overwhelming. Like, even though it's been like a few weeks now, I'm still trying to take it all in because it was such a special moment, especially with my family being there. Like the
Yeah.
history I've had at Eve and the journey leading to it was such. It's just been a long journey, and everything's kind of started to pay off, and that was kind of like the big moment of I can do it and I've done it, So it was just incredible. Like I can't even really find the words to describe it. So
Yeah, let's talk about your parents for a second because I did a lot of scrolling on your Instagram before this. And I mean, you've posted many, posts kind of dedicating and thanking them, especially your dad. You wrote this
yeah.
long blurb, how he's been very supportive and kind of also like introduced you to wrestling too growing up and
Yeah.
has been there since you started training at 13. Your mom has
Mhm.
also been super supportive. So talk about kind of your relationship with your parents as you like from fandom to now like professional wrestler.
Yeah, for sure. So both my parents grew up watching wrestling. So I think that in itself, I kind of was automatically drawn into it. So
Yeah.
my mum had two brothers growing up, and they loved the wrestling, so that's how she kind of got into it all. And then my dad always watched it and continued watching it, like even after they had me, and he would just chuck it on the TV, like whilst babysitting us, and I would just like couldn't keep my eyes off the telly. It was just this whole new world for me, especially like being so young and so invested into it, like. And I think maybe they thought I was going to grow out of it, but when I didn't, and then I was like, I want to actually try this. And I was only like 12 at the time saying, Dad, please, can you find me a training school? And he's like, there's none around. I don't, you got to be older to do it. But I mean, we ended up finding one. But yeah, I don't, it's just always been around for as long as I can remember. And my dad is every second of the way, and my mom has always supported like my dreams and wanting to
Yeah.
do that, even if it was just for fun or if it wasn't going to last long. But as long as I was enjoying whatever it was that I was doing, they would just like go for it. And especially my dad, because my dad would come even if training was like 4 hours, he would just sit there the whole time and watch. Even in the winter when like it'd be freezing cold in there, he would still sit in there with his coat just watching me. And I think it's just great to have such supportive parents because I am so lucky in that way because, of course, a lot of people unfortunately don't have that or they don't
Yeah.
understand. But I'm very blessed to have those kind of parents.
Now I'm curious for you. I know, like I said, you started training at like 13 years old, and
Yeah.
even before that, you had been wanting to, had this dream for a while. Was that oh, think back to your younger self. What did the younger self and version, your older self, doing when they grew up? Was it always professional wrestling, or did you have some other aspirations when you were younger?
You know what? Like, I was always very sporty. Like,
Yeah.
um, I love sports. Like in school and even in secondary school, I always grew up playing football. So if wrestling wasn't around or if wrestling wasn't a thing, I think I would have took football more seriously because I did really enjoy it, but it got to a point where it was like you need to choose football or wrestling. So,
Yeah.
like it was only for like my local team and that, but I lost the passion for football because wrestling was coming in and um I realized I could like train places and that was always if I knew I could do it and I could go somewhere and be able to train, and that was always going to be it. But if this wasn't the dream though, like I don't know what my any other job would be. Like I love animals, right?
Yeah.
I do dog walking as well. So if wrestling wasn't a thing, I think I'd be working in like a rescue center or a rehabilitation like for animals. So yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of different routes, but I've not really thought about it properly.
You're also only still 19, 20 years old, so you
Yeah,
still have like a lot of time and you're still very
yeah,
early in your career, you know? I'm curious,
for
do you have
sure.
any pets like personally?
Yes, my
Ooh,
dog is
yes.
on my oh, let me flip the camera. He's
Oh,
right there. Marley.
oh.
Hello.
I love pets. I have two cats, but I love dogs myself too. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I used to have a hamster called Pickle, and oh my
Mhm.
god, if I could have every animal in the world, I would.
Does your dog have any? I feel like all pets have like weird habits or just strange things that they do. Does your dog have any strange habits?
When do you know when he's sleeping, he makes these. I think he's dreaming, but he makes these really odd
Mhm.
noises and like he like proper twitches, like as if he's
Yeah.
running in his dream, and he chases his tail all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
My cats do that, so I get that. What are
he's
you
starting to
dreaming
cry
about,
now.
buddy? What are
I
you
know,
dreaming
right?
about?
Such a cutie.
That's funny though. I love our pets. Kind of going back to your major win at Eve. As an added layer, I mean, you grew up watching all four of the previous winners, that being Charlie Morgan, Jamie Hayter, Millie McKenzie,
Mhm.
and Alex Windsor. And now
Mhm.
here you are joining an elite group of women as the winners of the She Won. Can you talk about this aspect of your win and what that meant to you to join this group of
Yeah.
women that you grew up watching?
Uh, I think that in itself really adds to how big the moment was. Like, because there's a moment I won it and I was like, wow, like this is cool. And then I think back to the history of it, and it's like I watched these people like wherever it was that I watched them. I've seen them back like down the line, and to know I've almost sort of not followed in the footsteps, but I've kind of come on the same path like throughout Eve, and I've won the tournament, and especially like how I look up to them as well, you know, and that's just really special and very surreal for me. Like I don't know, I feel speechless, you know. I don't really know how to comprehend it all. To be fair,
Yeah, it's surreal, you know. It is one of those things where you're like you don't know how to describe it. It's
yeah,
so
oh,
surreal and obviously means a lot to you. But
yeah,
this wasn't your only major moment in Eve this year. Over the summer, you had the opportunity to wrestle former ROH Women's Champion and 23-year veteran Mercedes Martinez in her return match to Eve. You did not win the match, but you did put up a
uh,
hell of an effort in a match that lasted over 20 minutes. Can you talk
mm-hmm.
about this opportunity and your experience working with a veteran like Mercedes?
It was absolutely insane because I remember when Dan told me it was happening, and I was just like, "What?" I was like, "Say that again, like say it again," because I don't think I actually believed him at first, but obviously it happened.
Yeah.
Um, again, I was just so thankful that I was able to get that opportunity and learn from someone like her, especially where she's been doing it for so long and she's just so talented in like every aspect of wrestling. It really helped me learn a lot, like within the match and kind of just talking before, it's it was scary because all I wanted to do, I was like, oh, I hope I can live up to how I've been hoping the match would be. Like, I hope it's good. I hope I impress her. I hope the fans love it, And I was just kind of putting that bit of pressure on myself because I was just so. I mean, I was so nervous. I was so nervous, but it was one of my favorite, probably my favorite match I've ever had, and the most I've learnt from. So yeah, very grateful for that opportunity, especially being her as well.
It's crazy to think she started wrestling before you were even born. But
Yeah, I know.
you're on this uprise and getting to work with a veteran like her, like you said, was a major learning opportunity for you. So can you talk about some of the things you either learned from working with Mercedes or maybe some feedback or advice she specifically gave you?
Yeah, for sure. Like just during the match, kind of living in the moment of the match, feeling everything around you. Don't rush. Just take it in and do what feels right. And she very much helped lead, of course. And then in like throughout, I got a lot more comfortable with how the match was going. So there was a lot of things that were called on the fly, and in that aspect as well, I learned a lot. And it doesn't have to be so set in what you have to do. Like you can be free with it and be creative with it. So I think it opened my mind up a lot more to it doesn't need to be super serious, like and oh, I'm just thinking back at it now, and it is crazy because especially like after the match as well, and everyone was standing up and clapping,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, it was such a surreal day, and she was I was just so scared at first, just because I wanted to impress her,
Yeah.
and impress everyone else. And yeah, she gave me good advice like after the match, and for the future, like you don't need to plan everything. You don't need to think too much. Sometimes simple is better, and you can do more with that. So I mean, I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask just in general too, you've been surrounded by a lot of veterans and kind of legends in the wrestling game. What would you say has been the best piece of advice or words of wisdom just in general that has really helped you throughout your career so far, and who did it
Sure.
come from?
Oh my god, you put me on the spot now.
No, we won't say just one, a couple of
No, no, no,
things
it's
then
fine.
maybe that stand out to
That's all
you.
right. I think it sounds so simple, and it's not necessarily one specific person, but just from everyone, and
Mhm.
especially when I was like early. I mean, I know I'm very early stage now, but like at first, and even still now, just slow down. It doesn't have to be a race. It doesn't need to be rushed. If you're going slow, go slower, because it won't look as messy. It will look better. I think that advice, when you first hear it, you're like, what do you mean? But then when you
Yeah.
actually consciously make the effort, and it's like slow down, chill out, breathe, you're like, oh, okay, no, this is actually it actually helps. It's good advice. And it's the sort of thing you obviously have to have those matches first, and um what's the word, like develop after each match and get better and better. So yeah, just slow down. It's not the end, like it's not the end of the world if you don't have to do everything, right? You don't have to say yes to every
Yeah.
single thing. And I feel like in my first year of wrestling, I wanted to say like yes, yes, like to absolutely like anything and everything. And where like before wrestling, I was never really very confident. Like if there was no sort of pro wrestling, I wouldn't be on a stage anywhere else. So I think oh my god, what the hell did I just say? I completely forgot.
Taking in the moment, kind of slowing down, and you were saying at the beginning of your career you kind of said yes to everything. You were a
Yeah,
yes girl. But then, as you go on, you realize you don't need to say yes to everything because I mean,
that was it.
you didn't say this, but it could lead to burnout and all of that,
Yes, yeah,
keeping
yeah, yeah.
yourself sane too.
That's it. That's it. Sorry, I don't know why. I
It's
just had
all
a
good.
mind blank. But yeah, where I was never like really the most confident person, um, I think where that and added pressure on myself and thinking, oh, I need to do this show, I need to do this match, I need to say yes to this person. I think I was trying to take on too much, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, I mean, obviously that didn't last. I think it's just a blip, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets on top of you, but then it's just take a breath. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to have free time. Um, so I think, yeah, you don't need to say yes to absolutely everything. Do what you're comfortable with doing, and if you want to say yes to everything and you're comfortable with doing that, then do that as well, you know. But just be comfortable within yourself and do what you want to do, you know.
Yeah, and kind of learning from those experiences, can like attribute to a lot of growth, especially early on in your career. I feel like everybody even still has challenges. And one of them I feel like that I've heard just as a recurring thing is also confidence, but also like you said, not being like a yes person. I am especially like that in my real life and, just in general. But, kind of talking about your growth so far, how else do you think that you've grown as a person and as a competitor since you've entered this wrestling space?
Yeah. So so personally, as myself, I think before wrestling, I was very I still am quite shy, but before wrestling, I was very much in my shell. But meeting all these people that you have no choice to meet them, you know, you meet so many people and it brings you out of your shell naturally. And I think that was probably it was hard at first because
Yeah.
I always felt like I was socially awkward. But now because of the amount of people I've met and the type of people I've met, I feel like I've become such more of a outgoing person and I'm able to talk to more people, even not just in wrestling, but outside of
Yeah.
wrestling. You know what I mean? Just talking to everyday people is just so personally in that side, it's got a lot better, which I'm very grateful for. And I've not really realized that until sort of looking back on it, you know? And I think growing as a wrestler, um, from when I first started, like when I look at myself now, if I saw like a recent picture of myself now and I looked at a picture from the first match that I had, it's like they're two completely different people in the amount of I don't want to keep saying confidence, but just in the way I'm growing in that aspects and just how more comfortable I'm coming into myself as Sapphire and as the wrestler of Sapphire Reed, you know. So it's been a journey and I'm obviously still not there yet,
Yeah.
but it's getting gradually it's getting better and better and better. So yeah, the journey is it's still ongoing, but it's great at the moment.
Yeah, and you talk about pushing yourself out of your shell and meeting new people. Let's talk about one of those people. We mentioned her earlier. She was one of the former winners of the She Won. But earlier this year, you had the chance to wrestle Millie McKenzie at Nova. You met
Mhm.
Millie when you were a 14-year-old fan, and now you have the chance
Okay.
to wrestle. Tell us about this sort of full circle moment in fulfilling one of your dream matches.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I used to watch Millie in like Progress and obviously Eve and wherever else she would wrestle. And where she was obviously so young at the time, and I
Yeah.
would watch her, I would be like, she's only a few years older than me, and she is doing so well and she's so good. And I think in my head, the reason I looked so like up to her so much was one, I just loved her style and her as a wrestler, but
Yeah.
I was like, she's so young, and if she can do it and she's doing this well now, maybe one day I can be there and go the way she's going. And from thinking of all of that to then going to wrestle her myself, it was definitely a full circle moment of how cool it was, you know, like being 14 and watching her in a ring to now myself actually wrestling her and talking to her and actually being good friends with her now. You know, it's crazy how the wrestling world works. But and that was also one of my favorite matches. with Millie, and I hope to wrestle her again soon because she's just so good, too
Yeah,
good.
fingers crossed. I absolutely agree. She's absolutely incredible. And like you said, like she started wrestling really young too, and she still is. She's what, maybe 23, 24
Yeah.
now.
Uh-huh.
Still very, very young, and somebody who's also kind of a veteran now, which is like crazy to think about still at such a
Yeah.
young age. But, I also wanted to mention somebody else in the UK wrestling space, that being Amira. I absolutely love her personally, but I know you
Oh,
two kind of
yeah.
have this frenemy thing going on.
Mhm.
You've faced off with her a few times, but I've seen this rivalry has extended to social media with you two often going back and forth. I know there's some love there, but can you tell us how or why this rivalry actually started?
Do you know what? I actually don't know. I think I'm trying to think when it actually.
She's also just an instigator. I'm friends with her personally
Oh
too.
yeah,
She's just an instigator. I love her though, but it's just
yeah,
hilarious seeing you two going back and forth. But then
yeah, for
other
sure.
days she's like, like I'm rooting. You guys got to watch Sapphire, and
Yeah,
I see
yeah,
her rooting on you. It's just so funny to watch this
yeah,
unfold.
yeah. So like, it makes me laugh because when obviously I started training at 13, and then I
Yeah.
took a break for a bit, and then I didn't come back until I was uh 17 when I started training again,
Mhm.
17, 18, and then so I went to a training session with Amira, and I was
Yeah.
this shy little girl, and I barely spoke a word, and it just makes me laugh now because of how much we just rip each other apart. Like we're just so sarcastic with each other, and I think because we both know we can take it, so we've just
Yeah.
extended it, not even on purpose, but just through social media. Just I think just for our own entertainment, and oh my god, it's just an ongoing thing, and I think it will be like that forever.
You mentioned earlier that you were breaking out of your shell gradually. Would you say that the outgoing Amira has been one of those kind of maybe influences in that process?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, because she's so like in the best way, such an extrovert.
Yes.
And I think I needed someone like that at the time to, because she like forced me out of my shell, and she was kind of like a sister figure to me at the time, and still is. I absolutely love her. Um, she better not hear me say that, otherwise, ugh, pretend I just didn't say that. Um, yeah, I think me being so quiet at the time, to then her just being loud, funny, and everything, and she would always included me in things as well, which really helped with my confidence again. Yeah, I mean, I do have to give her credit. She has definitely brought me out of my shell.
She is the feisty flame of Ireland, so it's right in her
It's
name. I'm just saying.
Yes, it's yeah, yeah. We'll give her credit for that. Just this one time though. Marley, can you
Shout out to Amira.
Yes, I suppose.
Now, when talking about your nickname, one of your nicknames anyway, you do call yourself the Radioactive One. Can you
Yeah,
kind of further explain the origin story of the Radioactive One and what this moniker specifically means to you?
yeah. So I'm trying to think how it all started and how it came about. At the time, I was trying to find sort of some music to come out to, and I there was Radioactive
The
by
Imagine
Imagine
Dragons?
Dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I came out to that for a while, and I didn't think anything of it, and then people started singing Radioactive in the audience. Yeah, right, and then it caught on, and I was like, maybe I could like make a thing out of this, and so I did. I started calling myself the Radioactive One, and I realized I can bring sort of aspects into that with my gear, and um so that's literally what I did, even with like t-shirt designs and things like that. And the good thing is with that is there's so many more things I can do with it. So I'm gonna get more new gear made soon, but I won't give any spoilers.
Yeah.
But and there's other like ways to advance my appearance, like in the ring and ring attire, which I'm also going to be bringing out soon. But I'm not gonna spoil it too much because I want it to. It's oh, I backtrack and I start talking and then I start rambling on everything. But I think the radioactive one, I don't know why it became a thing, but when I realized I can make something out of it, I was like,
Yeah.
let's try this. And it worked and it's working. And I love it because there's so many ways I can go from there on how I present myself as well.
Can you kind of talk about in that ring gear department some of the elements that you've pulled from your interpretation of the radioactive one, whether it be like a certain color choice or design? Can you kind of talk about some of those radioactive inspired elements that we can see in your present ring gear? Not, we won't talk about future yet to let that be
Yeah,
a
sure.
secret, but just ones that you've already kind of brought in into your ring gear and your overall presentation.
Hmm. So obviously like the main colors of I suppose like radioactive is yellow and black or green and yellow. So
Yeah.
I incorporated obviously that into this set and oh, and on my knee pads as well. I've got the sign obviously on the knee pads with just the radioactive sign, and I think with the flames on my gear as well because I was trying to kind of put things together like what could kind of in a sense relate to that word, you know. And I thought the flames looked cool with it, with the colors and it with the slight shine on it. And I think even with just that, there's so many ways I can adapt it now and
Mm,
change it into different things. Because before I had that gear, I had this. It was like cheap pre-made gear that I
yeah.
found, and I still wear it. I love it. It was the green and black gear, and it was kind of it was like marbly colors, and I was like, that kind of was like a sneak peek into what radioactive is. But now I can develop myself and my character more with the presentation of it and how I can take little ideas from the design itself and how I can make it my own, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of I don't know, because I mean, I'm just looking up the formal definition of radioactive, and obviously it can be like interpreted a couple different ways, but
Yeah.
the formal definition is obviously emitting or relating to the emitting of ionizing radiation or particles. So kind of, like energy, going into that could be like fire and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I think when people think of like radioactive, they might think of like volcanoes too as well, like
Yeah.
hence like the fire and stuff like that. There's a few different ways you can interpret that, but also kind of make it your own.
Yeah.
So I'm curious for yourself from a certain like character standpoint, not necessarily your presentation, but like your mannerisms, your traits, your behavior. How would you describe Sapphire as a character outside of the physical presentation?
Mm-hmm. So if we're going from now, because I think at the start I really had no idea, you know, but now it's still of course a learning process to try
Yeah.
and wrap your head around because character's a big thing. But I think especially now with the opportunities I've been given, especially at EVE, people are starting or can now see this sort of fiery side, this dangerous side that people have not seen before. And now it's like it was Sapphire, the young wrestler, and now she's actually becoming radioactive, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? So like she's becoming more dangerous. She's becoming this person that no one thought she could be because she was just this 18-year-old girl in crappy blue gear. And now I come out with such more confidence that I am like I own it and I know I can do it sort of thing. So I think if I look back from my character development from when I first started out to now, maybe don't get me wrong, it's definitely not completed and there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
But I've definitely found myself a lot more and believe in what I am and who I'm trying to come across as, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like I said, you're still in the early stages and developmental stages, if you will, of your career, especially so young. And kind of going off of that, too, you call yourself the Grappling Goddess as well. I know in your early training days, you did a lot of mat work since you couldn't take bumps until you were 16, I think. So
Yes.
is that where the grappling element of your style came from, or how did you decide upon the Grappling Goddess as kind of this alternative nickname for yourself?
Yeah, so yeah, like as you said, I couldn't bump until I was like 15, 16. So there was a lot of grappling that I was learning
Yeah,
beforehand, um and I want to incorporate that a lot more into my matches. Like if I could just have a pure technical wrestling match,
yeah.
like I'd absolutely love it. And I want to do it. I want to start doing it more. But I think that's come from one of my trainers before when I first started training had the idea, and I was like, oh, like that sounds kind of cool. Let's see if I suppose it's just another nickname. I don't necessarily incorporate it with the character side, but
Yeah.
where I know I can adapt to that style if I need to, that's why, you know?
Yeah, and always kind of have that people again, wrestling is so fluid. People have multiple
Mm,
nicknames, people reinvent themselves or have multiple identities, in wrestling. It's such a fluid thing. It's not like a singular individual thing. It's kind of one of
yeah.
those things where you can control and have different multiple layers, if you will, to your character. And kind of two more questions for you, shifting away from the character aspect. This year, from what I recall, you've wrestled in 5 different countries:
Hmm.
England, Wales, Denmark, Spain, and Germany. I don't
Yes.
know. I think those are the 5. I
Yeah.
know you're eager to expand your horizons even more in 2024. So,
Yeah.
what are some locations and countries you're hoping to travel to next year?
Oh my God, next year. So I'm going back to Denmark next year, which is cool. But I want to just more places around Europe. You know,
Yeah.
like uh, Italy. I'd love to wrestle in Italy. Um, there's been it's annoying because there's been some circumstances where I've been offered a booking in Portugal was one of them, but I, I can't remember what had happened, but there was like complications with like personal life and other
Yeah.
things happening, so I couldn't do it. But definitely a lot more of the European places, obviously outside of the UK and like Ireland, just literally anywhere. And I think, oh, what was the oh there was a place that I specifically wanted to go, but now I actually can't remember what it was.
So,
I'm going back to Germany next year as well. Anywhere that I can go, really. I suppose there's not like a set list. If I can go outside of Europe, I would also love that, you know. But I think for next year, I'm definitely going to be going a lot more places within Europe for sure. But if the opportunity comes to be able to go to America or Japan or Canada or anywhere,
yeah.
I just want to travel the world, you know, like so whatever opportunities come at me, I'm just gonna snatch them up.
Yeah, I feel like 2023 was a really good year for you, but 2024, I feel like you can only just go up from here, and kind of outside of travel while we're looking at the future. What are some of your other personal and professional goals for 2024?
2024.
New
Personal
Year is like
goals.
right around the corner, which just
It
is like
is.
slowly approaching. It's crazy.
I know it's kind of terrifying, but personal goals. I think again, just looking after myself. You know, just as simple as that. Just making sure that I'm in a good headspace to be able to continue what I'm doing and what I love, and professionally to just keep getting better and pushing myself outside of that comfort zone, which I suppose also applies to the personal side of goals, to
Yeah.
keep pushing myself outside of those comfort zones, which even like as simple as learning new moves or things I wouldn't think I would be able to do, but I know I could if I put my mind to it. And just I want to go up north a lot more next year in England. So, and Scotland, I want to wrestle in Scotland as well. That's one of them. But I think this year I've been able to go up north, like Liverpool and Manchester a couple
Yeah.
times towards like the back end of 2023, which has been cool. So I just want to keep traveling as much as I can around to all different promotions, making new debuts, and I suppose just whatever comes at me, I'm just gonna take it as it comes.
Yeah, I mean that's all you can do. Life is unpredictable, but it seems like I said you're headed on this upward trajectory. So, fingers crossed that you get to explore the world and get to at least head a little bit
Yeah,
more north, if nothing else.
yeah, for sure.
Before we let you go though, Sapphire, can you please tell the listeners where they can find you and support you on social media?
Oh my god, I need to remember my handles now.
Um,
Sapphire Wrestler is my Twitter.
yes.
Sapphire Wrestling is my Instagram, and my Facebook is, I want to say Sapphire Wrestling as well. It could be Sapphire Wrestler.
I'm gonna look.
I actually I don't know about that one. But it's Instagram and Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Those are the
Yes.
main two that I
Yes.
stay active on.
Yes. Well, Sapphire, thank you so much for joining me here today. Everybody go follow her. She is going to be a star to watch if you're not already following her. Sapphire, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a lot of fun.